Good evening, paranormal community, and thank you for partaking in this episode of the Odyssey Files. I am your host, Michael O'Neill. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. David Soring. Good evening, Dave.
Good evening, Mike. Good evening, Paranormal Universe. It's hot.
It's been hot for quite a long time.
No, it's like getting ugly hot though. It's like August hot. So 100-degree index, heat index is like 102. I'm just like, time to hide in the air conditioning.
Yep, yeah, it was. I had an investigation last night, and as I was packing up the car right before I left, and this is 5:30, 6 o'clock at night or whatever. I was only in my garage for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and I already had like a sheen of sweat.
Yeah.
That was forming, and I'm just like, yeah, it's hot. Yeah, and
a little toasty.
Yes, and I have been out because we've hit these temperatures multiple times in the last month, and and I'm the one that's out, one of the guys that's out, delivering and stuff like that, and all day long, and it's terrible. It really, really is. But that's okay.
I segued that, by the way. The weather was a segue for you for the first thing we're going to talk about tonight.
Oh, well, I was actually just about to go there. So
I know it's perfect segue for you.
Speaking of weather,
so
Thursday, this coming Thursday, which is August 24th, we have scheduled a very special interview with 2-hour interview with the showrunner of Skinwalker Ranch, Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And we're very, very, very excited about this. We've been trying to get him on for quite a long time, and finally have nailed down a date to do it. And so I think that our happiness is the reason why there is now a tropical storm hitting California. And because something astronomical has to happen in order to screw things up for us. And Mark, who is the showrunner, lives in Southern California, or just in California anyway. And try to talk to him today, just to go over all the details and everything. And he's getting ready for the flooding. He's getting ready for everything. So the reason why I bring this up is because if when as the week goes on, all of a sudden we have to cancel that show, that is the reason why. And it will be rescheduled. We'll get it going. But obviously, the safety and everything of Mark, his family, and all the people in California right now who are going to be affected by this tropical storm and the flooding to their homes and everything, their safety and their well-being is far superior to coming on the show and interviewing with us. As tough it is for me to say that, but let's be real here.
No, right, exactly. And it's not just California, it's Nevada, parts of Arizona, and the whole Baja Peninsula of Mexico. So it's going to hit 4 different regions.
Yeah, they're actually talking about all the way up into Idaho and Montana are going to get a couple inches of rain from this thing. I really do hope, and you all can hate me if you want, I hope that this storm wipes out Las Vegas.
That is Mike's personal opinion.
That
does not represent anything to do with the show or me.
That is absolutely my own personal opinion.
Exactly.
So that's why we might have had at some point in time the disclaimer, but we haven't for quite a long time now. So I will just say that particular comment. I hope Las Vegas gets wiped off the map. That's just
I
me.
hope the rain somehow like builds itself back up and goes up into Canada and helps out with the forest fires. Because
Are
I
they
mean,
on?
well, if you take a look at what's happening in Canada, and not to get on like weather topics and shit, but like 20% of they have like 20% or 40% of all the forested land on the planet Earth in Canada, and 20% of that is on fire.
That's not
It's right now. They said it'd be comparable if there was a forest to what's happening in the Northwest Territories in Canada, fire-wise. It would be comparable that if there was a forest fire in every single state in the United States of America simultaneously burning right now. That's the amount of magnitude of what that fire encompasses up in Canada. And we're getting like smoke from it and like health issues and
Oh yeah, I know.
respiratory air quality issues and stuff up here in Minnesota because it's drifted down. But so is Michigan, so is Wisconsin and whatnot. But
yeah, but nobody cares about those states.
you do if you have asthma or if you're elderly or you don't have an air conditioner and you're using fans and all your windows are open and you got forest fire smoke poured in. Probably not the best for you, but
they'll be fine.
They'll be fine. Yeah. They'll be the people we'll be talking to next time we go out.
Maybe.
So how was that forest fire smoke inhalation? Oh, it sucked, Dave.
Well, that are conversations that you can have. But so I just wanted to bring that up for anybody who is very much looking forward to that interview with Mark coming up on Thursday that might have to be postponed because of the weather, which is something you don't actually hear any of on radio.
No,
you catch this because of the weather.
Well, and you don't ever hear of weather issues out in California to the likes of like a hurricane.
Very, very
or
true.
A tropical storm. I mean, it's so rare that I think it's just the universe against us. That's what I think.
That's what I said.
Just when we were talking about angels a couple shows ago, same thing happened, right? We had all kinds of glitches because we were talking about positivity and high vibration levels and all that fun stuff, and all of a sudden everything just went to crap. When we were talking about the devil and demons and shit, everything went perfectly fine. We had no glitches whatsoever. So
that's very true. Or aliens. We didn't have that.
Or aliens for that matter, right?
So yes. So I definitely believe that our combined happiness, yours and mine, spun the universe into such a conniption fit that it created Hurricane Hillary.
I don't disagree with you.
You say there's no such thing as coincidences. So there you go. Anyways, so you had some
effect, not a coincidence.
Whatever. So you had something that you said that you had read today.
Yeah, I did recently. And I found it to be really interesting because we talked about this and we've talked about it many, many times on the show about how animals can hear substantially better than we can. And so I actually saw some facts and some numbers that were in a little blurb talking about kind of something else, but then it happened to say, this is the tested frequency range. So human beings can usually hear 20 to 20. So we hear at 20 gigahertz on the top end, or megahertz, gigahertz, whichever it is, megahertz, I think. Dogs can hear to 45 megahertz. So obviously substantially better than we can. So when we hear of people that have pets that are having them stare at the corner or watch something moving around the room, their eyes are following something. Dogs are much more perceptive, obviously, than we are. Cats take the prize hands down because they can hear at 80 megahertz. So that in this article, it said that a cat can hear a mouse walking across the floor 30 feet away. I found that to be very impressive. Now, the fact that cats are indifferent to everything on the planet Earth doesn't help at all in a paranormal investigation because they could see a spirit and just be like, whatever, you're not going to pet me or feed me. I don't give a shit about you. So they're more worried about the mouse or the fly that got trapped in the house that they're going to go chase to a window and then beat it up at the window, something like that. But I found it really interesting that their hearing is that much better than ours. Could you imagine if we heard like that? We'd probably go insane.
Well, it'd probably be it would be Daredevil all over again.
Oh, it would be bad.
I mean, yeah, you'd be able to hear everything. You'd be able to hear your neighbors making love, and knowing
Yeah,
that
that's
it
not
is,
what I
and
want.
no,
That's not what I want to hear. But
and knowing that it ain't you.
yeah,
That's enjoying
it's
it.
yeah, I don't want to hear a mouse walking 30 feet away. I mean, just everything else that would come glaring out of that. I will leave that to the cats.
Well, it
So
would
there's
make
my animal story for the week.
gotcha. I was going to say that it would make it easier to catch them.
Very true.
So, um, okay, well, uh, going on the assumption that Thursday's interview is going to happen,
Yep.
Dave and I are going to, during the second hour, we will be recapping some things that have happened on the show, Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. We'll be kind of, even though I don't know yet whether Mark is involved with Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. There will be some topics that bring up some stuff that has happened on that show as well. But we're gonna kind of talk about some of the things that have been found and realized and experimented with, and we will see what our discussion comes up with and whatnot. Because I think that I probably have a different take on things that have happened than obviously Dave does. I do think that we agree on a lot, but I think the importance of certain things or the origins of certain things might be a difference of opinion.
Well, not
So
only that, but I think like the 4 topics I sent over you today are part of what is going to be my questions on Thursday.
yes, and so a lot of these are you guys, the listeners, will hear kind of our takes on things going into Thursday's
Right.
interview, and so we will see how they measure up to what Mark actually tells us.
Right.
So, but first we have the Odyssey Files is proud to present the Mailbag. And
look at that. You remembered without having to be reminded. I'm impressed.
Every once in a while, I have moments of clarity.
Moments of clarity. I like that.
Where I'm like, yes, the mailbag. Mailbag. All right. So here we go. Number 1, mind reading man on the bus? Question mark. I wanted to share a strange experience that happened yesterday. I got on a bus to go meet a friend. There weren't many people on board, but there was a strange man, maybe mid-40s, sitting at the front of the bus. I didn't say anything to him, but when I walked past, he saw me. He said, "Oh, wow, you got amazing marks in psychology in school a few years ago. Congratulations, top 5%. Then he kept going on about my psychology degree. I've never met this man before in my life, but he accurately mentioned my major and my alma mater and was right about the fact that I did well. He even got the percentage right. There's no way he could know about me. My face and or name aren't mentioned anywhere, and even if they had been, it's been years since I graduated, and it would just be weird for a random stranger to remember me specifically and tell me this. I bumped into this man again today on the street in another part of the city, and he said, "Hello, Miss Psychology. I remember you. Have either of you or any of your clients experienced anything similar?" No. On to you, Dave. Just kidding.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, there's certainly potential for this to just be somebody who maybe taught at the university, and maybe because she did so well, her name came up, and like professors discussed like their top students. I'm sure sometimes the people that stood out to them, and maybe she was one of those people that really stood out to him, or to this guy. Maybe he was a professor. And if not, the flip side of that coin, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Honestly, it's weird. I mean, it'd be if somebody walked up to me, like I put myself in her shoes when I read this, and I'm like, if I was on public getting on the bus, and out of the blue, somebody on the bus is like, hey, you did, your advertising degree, marketing degree at Michigan State, that was fantastic, and you did so well in that class, and I would be taken aback, like, well, how the hell would you know that? And who are you how would you know who I am? And then you bump into the same person in another part of town and they bring that same topic back up a second time. I find that to be a little strange. It would also make me inquisitive. So if it were me putting myself in that situation, I would find out who the person is. I would engage them in conversation and be like, okay, obviously you got one up on me. You know who I am. You know where I went to school. You know I did well in my classes. What's the joke here? Am I being punked? Is there cameras hidden somewhere? Am I, what's going on? Like somebody put you up to this, one of my friends, some sort of practical joke. I would try to get to the bottom of it. I don't think I wouldn't scare me. I wouldn't be. Now, that said, obviously a female probably looks at it differently. Like this guy might be some sort of creep and stalker or, serial killer, psycho, whatever. So obviously she might have a different viewpoint of it or a female would have a different viewpoint than I would on it. Possibly. Not saying they would, but it's possible. But I would engage them and find out what's going on. And if they just didn't have a legitimate answer when I asked them the questions, then it probably would freak me out a little bit. I'd be like, well, that's kind of strange. And you're making me uncomfortable. So get the hell out of here.
Look, let me just say real quick that when I said on to you, I was joking.
Oh. Well, go ahead and finish up with what you wanted to say.
Well, no, because that was exactly it. Like, I do think that this person was probably a part of the university that she was a part of. I think that, just because she doesn't remember him doesn't mean he doesn't remember her.
Right.
Maybe she was, I mean, I hate to say this, but maybe she's particularly good looking and very rememberable. Maybe that was a particularly hard course. And so top 5% of students really stand out. I don't know if this is true or not, but I can't imagine like maybe files wouldn't have like the student photo that they had to take for like ID cards and stuff like that. So, I mean, who's to say that he just didn't work in administration or something like that and just happened to, maybe she has a facial feature or a smile or her eyes that reminded, it's like, oh, hey, I remember her. And if he's got a really good memory, like, I mean, I do. If somebody were to stand out like that, even a few years later, I would remember, things that stood out about her. I don't think that I would just throw out there the fact that I know all this stuff about her, because I agree, kind of creepy.
It is kind of creepy. Yeah, it's like the stalker feeling.
Right, exactly. And honestly, and I mean, and it may have come to pass where he would have thought that maybe she would remember him.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they have had a conversation before, but he was just so unremarkable, or she's got a bad memory. She just, a few years later, she's not going to remember, one conversation she had with some person she's only seen once, just because maybe he was helping a professor or something like that with this like one class.
Right.
So I think it's very, very likely that he just taught at her school or had some sort of connection with her school, more so than mind reading abilities, especially why, if you have the ability to read minds, but I would like, you know what? I'm going to bring up something that happened 4 years ago at her school. And that's what I'm going to talk to her about, even though I can read her mind. Like, you would think he'd be like, hey, I'm going to try out that restaurant you went to yesterday because you thought it was really good. Like, that's a mind reading type thing, not like 4 years ago you went to this school and got a good grade in this class. And that's what I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that'd be something more current. So, clients that experienced anything similar, I have not. Out of all the clients that I've worked with, I have not had anybody who's, or at least anything that they've discussed with me as far as somebody who's approached them and knew stuff about them uh, in this type of fashion, I guess. Trying to put it into the same kind of context, I would say no. I don't have any. I've never experienced it, and I know I've never had any clients that have experienced it either.
Nope.
So, okay, moving on. From the mind reading man, please explain this experience. I don't know what to make of it. I had an experience that was unexpected and strange, though I didn't think much of it at first. One day I noticed a maggot on the carpet of my living room, and then suddenly looking around, I realized that they were all over. Probably about 100 different maggots spread all throughout the floor of my home. We searched and searched for a source, even going so far as to check for dead animals or anything that might have went under the house and died. The maggots seemed to be coming from the carpet. We found nothing. Never found a source for any of them. Fast forward a few weeks of not seeing them, and suddenly there they were again, spread throughout the whole house from the kitchen to my back bedroom, again with no obvious source. This is the first time I've ever seen one maggot inside of my house, let alone all over the floor. Fast forward again a couple of months, and they appear again. Overall, they've appeared the same way about 5 different times. I just found out that something like this could possibly be paranormal. So, should I worry? I've pulled up the carpet, searched everywhere, and there is no obvious source anywhere. What else is strange is that they aren't bunched together in groups like is normal for maggots, but it'll be one here and there all over the floor. What exactly is going on here? Can either of you offer some suggestions? And no, my house is not filthy in any way. We have no trash piles anywhere either. It's just weird how they can be all throughout the house like that. I'll vacuum them up, then a few weeks later, they're back. Okay, so first thing, I totally agree that it's extremely weird that there are maggots spread all over your house. I'm not a maggot expert, but I totally agree with the fact that usually when you see maggot, and if obviously everybody I think knows what maggots are, but if you don't, they're fly larvae. I think that when you see maggots, they usually are in a group, because as the flies go in and whatever they're laying their eggs on, whatever, usually not to be visual here, but usually a dead animal or something to that effect, like a roadkill is what I'm thinking of. A flies will go in and land on it and eat. They'll lay their eggs. The eggs will hatch. The maggots will be born. They're in a big group, obviously, and then they eat until they turn into a fly. So to find them all throughout the house, kind of spread out, I find that to be extremely strange. The fact that it's happened 5 times is even more strange. Man, I'm having a hard time saying that this is not paranormal in some way. It certainly is not normal. So I guess in the context of the story, it would make it paranormal. But is it some sort of paranormal sign or something, some sort of warning? I can't get behind that because I've never heard of anything like that. Right away, I would imagine most people would read that and say, "Oh my God, there's maggots! It's evil. It's the devil." They're putting it. Does it smell like dead bodies and corpses in the house? Is it? Are you getting scratched? Are you waking up with bruises? Stuff like that. I get. I honestly, my answer here, I guess, would be maybe you've got an animal like a dog, maybe with long hair. And maybe it likes to go out and roll. And as if anybody who's a dog lover and has dogs, if and you've got a dog and they find a dead animal, the first thing they're going to do is roll around in it. And it's just gross, but that's just how it is. And dogs love that shit. They love to get that smell, whatever reason. So maybe a logical explanation would be you have a dog with longer fur. It rolls around and some dead animal it found. And then it comes in the house and shakes and it kind of throws the maggots all over. I know that sounds disgusting, but it would be a somewhat logical explanation. Now, that doesn't probably necessarily explain it happening 5 times, certainly could explain it happening once. So honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know. I'm on the fence on this one. I don't know if I'm going to go paranormal or if I'm going to say it's just natural causes. But whatever it is, the fact that it's happened that frequently is strange. That's all I
Yeah,
got, buddy.
yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. Here's the only reason why I can't go paranormal on this, and that is because it's the only thing that's going on. And um, you know, this person even said, I've recently learned it could be paranormal, which means this person has looked into it. And
Correct.
and if there were other things that were happening, like door slamming or a bad smell or anything like that, uh, or feelings of being watched, anything that is paranormal that goes with this sort of thing, I think that would have been added
Yeah.
to it. And because the thing is, it's specifically just talking about these maggots appearing, I can't go paranormal. I do think there's something missing. There's a piece of information missing from this that connects what is going on. And the fact that they're so far apart makes me think that maybe somebody else in the house is doing something that they don't want, the parents to know, or they don't want the rest of the family to know. And so every so often, um, you know, I don't want to say like they're going out and doing like satanic rituals and they're bringing back the larva and stuff like that, because I don't know. I have no idea. Um, but I just think that there's just something going on here that the writer of this isn't aware of. And the fact that they're so far apart, I mean, they're weeks, makes me think, is this the, digestive, or not digest, but gestation period? Is something going on where there are several nests or something like that are there, and maybe on the property or whatever, and the fact that they're rising out of the carpet is weird. Just
Yeah,
in and of
because they couldn't.
itself.
Yeah, they're maggots, right? They can't get through like the wood subfloors, right? They're not maggots that can't like materialize through wooden subfloors. So they have to be coming. They can't be coming from under the house. They have to
I
be
want
coming from
I wonder if they're
above
coming
somewhere
from I wonder if they're coming from the walls. Like maybe
or the
there's,
ceiling and dropping down.
yeah,
But you'd smell that, man. I mean, there's no way that if there was a dead animal and it was maggot infested to the point where it was maggot infested and it was in your house, I'm sorry, but unless your nose is cut off your face, you're gonna smell. You're gonna smell that smell. Rotting, decaying animal flesh is absolutely not missable.
right.
I
No,
mean,
I agree with you on that one. But I mean, is that like the only way that, you know fly larvae and stuff like that can get into the walls or whatever?
I don't know.
um so I mean, like I
I think
said,
it's strange that they're spaced out. Like I said, I don't understand that because maggots always group like where the eggs are laid, they'll group together and feast on whatever it is that they're feasting on in order to hit the maturation stage to become flies.
my my recommendation would be to get a, like, pest control.
Yeah, get an
some
exterminator out.
Somebody out there who will be able to go into your walls, will be able to go in underneath your house. Again, I mean, you said that there was nothing underneath there, so going on the assumption that somebody had gone underneath the house. But maybe it's smaller than what you're thinking. You're looking for a raccoon or something like that, and it's a mouse, or something like that. So I mean, I would get an exterminator out there, somebody who can go into uh that can go into the interior of your house and really look for these sort of things. But yeah, at the present moment, I'm not willing to say that it's paranormal. All righty.
All right, so I just want to throw this in there. You go because it made me think here for a second. Maggots
Okay.
only have a lifespan of 8 to 10 days.
So it's
So
something.
so if this is happening every 2 weeks and it's happened 5 times, or like not every 2 weeks, sorry, but like every couple of months, and it's happened 5 times, and so let's see, the life cycle of a fly consists of 6 stages: egg, first instar, second instar, third instar, pupa, and adult. Takes 2 hours to 3 days for them to hatch from eggs. Otherwise, it takes 6 hours for 5 months for them to develop into adults. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Something strange is going on. I agree with you. I think there's more. Something else is needed here. Somebody's missing some piece of information. But get an exterminator.
Exactly.
Because I know when you first Googled it, the first thing that popped up was demonic activity. If you Google right now, I guarantee you, if I Googled in, I'm finding maggots in my house with no explainable reason, with no explainable cause. The first thing that's going to pop up is something about demons infestation. Something is coming up like that. And I'm sure that when they Googled it, they're like, holy shit, this is worse than I thought. No, it's not. Get an exterminator. Find out what the reason is. There's a natural cause.
I think so.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
Well, yeah, very much hopefully. All righty, moving on. Not quite sure what I saw. Hopefully you guys can give me some insight into what I saw a few years ago. I was heading home after a night of door dashing, coming back from a drop-off in a very upscale, ritzy area that was secluded in the woods and bordered old farmlands. I'm pretty familiar with this area as I've lived within 20 minutes of it for most of my life. As I was turning onto the road, I saw what I thought was a deer crossing, so I slowed down, then slammed on my brakes when I actually saw it in the headlights. It looked like a deer, but it was just off. It was larger than the usual whitetail, and its skin looked like it was rotting off its body. Its back was sort of hunched, and its rear legs, from about the knees down, were nothing but broken, bony stumps. I was driving a Suburban at the time, and a sense of foreboding came over me as it turned to look at me. That's when I saw it was definitely not a messed up deer. It did not have a deer head or antlers, but more of a human-like skull with black voids where its eyes should be and longer, straight black hair like human hair. We stared at each other for about 20 seconds and then it just faded away into nothingness. No, it didn't run away, nor poof and disappear. It literally faded away like smoke dissipating. This happened about 4 years ago in an area I was quite familiar with, central New Jersey. I have driven down this road many times and at all hours of the day and night and have never come across this before, nor have I even heard about anything like it. I don't drink or smoke anything and consider myself rational and reasonably sane. After getting home, I did some research and believe I came across some sort of Wendigo. I know that they are spirits and not a cryptid species, but I have been wondering lately if I am perhaps wrong. I have since moved to Northeast Pennsylvania. Oops, lost my place. There we go. And have seen this figure twice more, both times driving home, but in different locations. Once on the county line and the other along some backcountry road. Both locations were in mountainous, heavy wooded areas, and both times I could sense it right before I saw it. The same eerie, foreboding feeling, and I would break out in goosebumps. Have I indeed seen a Wendigo or something else entirely? I think it's something else entirely, simply because Wendigos aren't spirits. they are they have gone through a spiritual type change, but they are not themselves spirits. They are indeed, I guess you could call them cryptids. I mean, they're kind of Native American type cryptids, as opposed to anything else. But I have never heard a story yet of a Wendigo just fading away. They go, they're fast. They're definitely very, very fast, and they can run away like nothing else.
And they can shapeshift, so they could manifest into something else.
Right. And so, but they don't fade away.
No, they don't just, yeah, right.
So what are we dealing with here then? I mean, why would you see this hideous, awful looking creature, especially in multiple locations, years apart? And the fact that you can sense it. So honestly, and I'm stretching here. I honestly am, because I don't know exactly what you're dealing with here, simply because of the whole faded away thing. But I honestly think you're creating it. Like, you are in some fashion uh, either hallucinating this creature, or you are creating it yourself. Um, which would explain why, even in central New Jersey, like, nobody's heard of this creature before, or seen it. Only you. It's always only you. I don't know if it's so much following you, because you didn't necessarily say it's been, each time it was a different type entity that looked the same. You said it was the same one. I've seen this creature multiple times since, even though I've moved to a completely new state.
Right.
So the fact that it's able to just dissipate when you see it, the fact that you're able to sense it when it's there, and the fact that it's moving with you, I think just gives more evidence to the fact of, um, you are in some way creating this being, whether it's hallucination or what. Um, that's my take on it.
All right, I'm going a totally different direction.
Yay!
I'm gonna say that this is something like a curse. I agree with the sense of foreboding. It certainly is not something like from central New Jersey. I find it weird. It sounds like it looks like a Wendigo, so I can understand why you when you looked up on the internet and tried to figure out what it was, that you came across some pictures that probably looked similar to what you saw, and it was classified as a Wendigo. So I totally get where you came up with that name at, but I don't think it is a Wendigo. Probably primarily for the exact same reason that Mike doesn't think it is, because I've never heard of a Wendigo just dissipating into smoke. They're not. I'm not going to say that a Wendigo can't be spirit form, because I don't know that for a fact. So maybe they can. To me, and I'm certainly no expert in Wendigos, but to me, they're more of a flesh and blood manifestation type creature, and I would put them more into a cryptid category than I would a spirit category. But that doesn't mean that we could be totally off, and because there's not a whole lot of evidence or proof or really legitimate experiences with Wendigos. I mean, it could just all be folklore. Maybe they don't even exist at all. But assuming that they do, I still don't think that that's what you saw here. What I think this is, I agree with the term foreboding. I think that, to me, that word stands out just drastically in this whole what this individual wrote in. I think that this is a precursor to something happening to you in a car accident. I don't know. I can't explain why it's showing itself in this kind of creature form. But one of these times when it appears in front of you in the road and you slam on your brakes, or you don't slam on your brakes and you try to avoid it, I think that you're going to avoid it, drive off the road and get into an accident, and possibly a fatal accident. And I think that that's what, for some reason, this whole thing is manifesting itself and showing it to you. It's not obviously not a bright outlook on what's happening in your life, but it's what my gut is telling me, is that something is going on in your life that's coming back to haunt you, or somebody put a curse on you. This totally reads like gypsy to me. Like something, like you got the gypsy woman who ran across this individual or whatever, and he did something to her, and she cursed him, and this is the manifestation of that curse. That's where I'm going. So I don't know why. That's just kind of what popped into my head when I heard about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, interesting though. I think it's, whatever it is, it's following him.
Hmm.
It's certainly, I mean, you saw it the first time in Central New Jersey. Now you're in Northeast Pennsylvania. Obviously, it's with you. So it's a manifestation, either a real manifestation that you're visualizing, or possibly, like Mike said, it's a manifestation that you're creating. Although I don't know why if you were creating it, I would think you would see it more frequently. I don't think it would be such a rare thing. And I don't think it would only be on these kind of back mountainous country roads that you're seeing it at. I think you'd be seeing it more frequently, um, and in other locations. I think the locations that you're seeing it is the precursor for you swerving off the road in a mountainous area and like driving down the side of a mountain or slamming into a big tree or something like that.
I mean,
So anyway, yeah,
I was just saying, if he has a Suburban, he should just hit it.
just hit it. That's what my mind already went there too. I mean, I've had many Suburbans. I thought the same thing. You got one of the biggest SUVs on the planet Earth on the road. Just hit it and then see what happens. If you go out and it's laying on the ground wounded and it manifests from this animal into a human being, get back in your Suburban and run away. So that would be my advice, because you just really pissed off a real Wendigo, and now you're in trouble. So. Okay, moving on. Anyone else seen this phenomena? My father passed away almost 3 years ago now, and to this day, I can't wrap my head around what I saw that night. He was in hospice, nonverbal, drugged, and asleep when he passed. Being COVID times, only my mother and I were by his side at that moment. Only 2 visitors were allowed at the time. After he had stopped breathing, my mom and I were just staring at him peacefully and holding his hands, one on either side of his bed. It was dimly lit in his room, and we were both really exhausted after a 5-day off and on vigil. My mom pulled the cord for the call nurse, and we waited. As I was staring at the wall above his head, it seemed like I could see some kind of vapor or something. It reminded me of the way heat distorts your view over a campfire, totally clear, but distorted and wavy moving. My mom caught me looking, and I must have had a puzzled look. She shocked me by saying, "Do you see that?" So she saw it too. Up till then, I figured I was just fatigued and imagining things. I replied, "Yeah, what is it?" She didn't reply, just shrugged her shoulders in an I don't know kind of suggestion. Usually she would be the one to try to take the opportunity to point out some kind of religious proof. She's very Catholic and I am not. I said, "Let's switch sides," because I wanted to see if it was the same from her vantage point. So we got up and did that. I reached out to see if I could feel any heat emanating from my dad's head, but nothing. I was really trying to figure this out to find a logical explanation. It's not like he would have had that much more heat than before coming out anyway, considering that his body wouldn't be making as much. And surely not enough to distort the air. The room wasn't cool at all, as my dad always complained of the cold. This went on for a long time, maybe 20 minutes or more. Then the nurse came in and we were asked to step out for a minute. When we came back in, the window had been opened by the nurse and a fresh breeze blew in. The nurse explained that they always open a window to let the spirit escape, which was news to me. My dad was covered at that point, and there was no more of that phenomena happening. Guys, what did I see? I'm a skeptic. I don't know if I believe in the realm of the spirit, although I know what I witnessed that night. Good question here. Good personal experience. Sorry about the passing of your dad, but I'm glad that he went in kind of a calm, peaceful way. I'm going 100% here with the fact that you saw his energy, his soul, his spirit, whatever you want to call it, leaving his body, and that manifestation of that energy, what to you visually was this vaporous type of distorted air figure above his head. The fact that it didn't carry any heat to it makes total sense. It wouldn't carry any heat to it, even though it looked to you, your brain processed it as some type of manifestation of heat because you've seen something similar, as you mentioned, when looking at a camp, like the top of a campfire. I see something different when I see manifestations of energy like that. I see this really unique green color, and it looks almost like a lightning bolt. It's not the wavy, clear color. It's this funky green, lightning bolt, and then there's the manifestation of energy, and I know something's there or something has just appeared. I think that what you caught is your dad's soul leaving. The thing that, and I don't question this, obviously, I mean, it is what it is, but it seems to me like it took a long time, or that he was spending time with you as his soul was leaving his body, and that his body was no longer useful to him, that he was hanging out in the room with you guys, probably trying to communicate or let you know that everything's okay and that he's in a better place and that he's headed to a better place. I really like the fact that the hospice nurse came in and opened up the window to let the spirit out. I think that was a great move. And so, yeah, I think you had a great personal experience. I think you saw your dad's spirit leaving. Nothing to be scared of. I think it's a great story, and I think it's a great personal experience to share down the road.
100%.
I know. I did throw that out there, didn't I?
Yes, 100%.
Second time I've said it on the show in the last 5 years.
In the last, like, 2 weeks.
Well, yeah, in the last 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks out of the last 5 years. Second time I've thrown it out there.
You're getting used to it. Every week now, it's gonna be 100%.
No,
100% believe this.
no.
Yeah.
In this case, I do. This one, I totally believe this is the manifestation of the soul leaving the body.
Right, and I 100% agree with you. I was confused as to why it took the nurse 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah, and maybe it didn't. Maybe it just seemed like that because time goes by differently when you're spending time with the deceased person. You know, it could have seemed like 20 minutes, but it really wasn't.
I know. I was just like, wow, 20 minutes of just hanging out with, this vaporous mass. And honestly, I think the father was probably just like, will you open up a window? Will somebody open up a window so I can leave?
Yeah,
it's like, seriously, where's that nurse? I don't want to leave. So, I mean, it's not like even when the nurse opened the window, it didn't stick around, to say anything or whatever. But yeah, I absolutely agree that was the father's soul leaving his body, probably waiting for the window to be opened. I'm actually glad that is something that hospice nurse. I don't know if all hospice nurses do that. I've never. I have a hospice nurse that is kind of part of the family. I've actually never really talked to her about whether she does that or not. I probably should, but
you should ask her and see if that's a common thing. In places where windows can be opened, because I'm sure some of those places like hospitals, the windows are there, but they're sealed shut. But in a situation where you can open a window, you should ask her, and if she does that, or if anybody like she works with does that. I think that's a great thing. Releasing the spirit. Hospice nurse is a tough job, man.
Hospice nurse is a really, really tough job.
It's a really tough job, man. You got to be,
especially if you believe in the paranormal.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I agree with you, Dave, in that it's a great personal experience, skeptic or not. I'm glad this person was open enough to be like, hey, what is this? So I think I would take comfort in the fact of like yeah, that was your father moving on to the next step in his journey. And yeah, that's all I got. It's nothing more I need to add.
Nope.
All right. So I've said this before. I will say it again. I am both thankful and appalled that you gave this one to me.
It's not a cat story, man. So get over it.
Exactly.
But there's a perfect question for you.
No, it's not. That's okay. All right. What happens when a poltergeist encounters soft closed hinges? No, There's not a punchline to this. I'm genuinely curious if the slamming is still attempted, if it gets angrier, or just messes with other objects instead. Okay, I get it. You're curious, but you have no flipping clue what a poltergeist even is. Just because you seem to think that because slamming doors is a common occurrence when it comes to poltergeist, that it's the noise that they're after. And if they can't get that noise, they become frustrated by soft close hinges. No, they will still slam the hinges will, or the door will still slam. It just will not make a noise. So I'm assuming you picked this one, Dave, because obviously in the coming weeks we're going to be doing a show on poltergeist. So this is kind of a lead up to that.
A little lead up to it. Yep.
Yep. So because we're going to be talking about poltergeist like in specifically for an entire show,
Yep.
I won't go into too much detail about what a poltergeist is, but poltergeists do not have like a plan. there's no like, all right, well, this person's home, so I'm going to slam this door really loud and scare the shit out of them, and I'm going to have my fun. Oh no, I got thwarted by a soft closing hinge. Oh no, I'm so
That's
mad.
hilarious. It's hilarious to think that though. Like, it wants to slam a drawer and it's going in at 90 miles an hour, and then it goes, oh, wait a second, and then hits the soft close thing, and the thing's like, oh, what the hell was that? That would just be absolutely hilarious.
I'm like, I can't believe that's thwarted by technology.
Trying to thwart me. Yeah.
So no, it's not going to get more frustrated. It's not going to turn and go and do some other object so it can get its little scare tactic in. Poltergeists they're just energy. They're PK manifestations of the human being. So yeah, there's no, I mean, there may be malicious intent put into it, but what a poltergeist does and what it throws or slams or anything like that is not like part of a plan of what they're trying to do. So no, it's not going to get frustrated. It's not going to suddenly move on to something where it can make a bigger noise. It will still slam the door. It just will not be loud. And that's all I got for that one, because we're going to be talking about poltergeist anyway in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's a genuinely interesting question. I still think that you would hear the slamming, even though it's a soft close hinge. I still think that there would be the ability to manifest the slamming sound. Kind of like, if you think about it, like in some of the stuff that we hear with poltergeist activities, and we'll talk, I'm not going to get into it deep either because I want to get to this last question. But, you'll hear things like glass breaking, china breaking, it sounded like one of my windows shattered, and you go in there and you look in the room and you're expecting to see this disaster, and nothing's out of place, right? Everything's perfectly in place. So I don't think soft close hinges necessarily are going to thwart the sound of something slamming. I think that the slamming would still happen even with soft close hinges. Now how that happens, we'll dig deeper into that in a couple weeks. So
yeah, and I would just like to point out also that, I mean, we're dealing with energy here,
right.
Energy transference and all this other. I don't think soft close hinges is going to stop a slamming door when thrown by pure energy.
No.
I know when we do it, obviously it will, but this is something completely different. Right. And that's a great point about the sound without the movement.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. So I think that's something to take into consideration. But yeah, we'll talk about that here in a few weeks. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go to intermission, and we'll come back. We'll answer this last question because I agree. I do want to tackle this question as well, and then we'll move on to our main topic of the evening. So, all right, we will see everybody in a few minutes.
This is Susan Slaughter from Paranormal Caught on Camera, introducing you to the most epic show ever, The Odyssey Files with David Soyering and Michael O'Neill. You're welcome. Pew, 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 pew.
Hey, this is Grant Wilson from Ghost Hunters, and if you ever have time that you never want to get back, spend it listening to Mike and Dave on the Odyssey Files.
This is Heather Taddy of Paranormal State and Alien Highway. I can't say that the Odyssey Files are out of this world, but Mike and Dave are quite abductable.
Hey, this is Dustin Perry from Ghost Hunters, and you're listening to Dave and Mike on the Odyssey Files. It's not the best show you're ever going to listen to, but it's also probably not the worst.
This is Michelle Belanger, author of The Dictionary of Demons. What is faster than a speeding shadow person and more fun than an anal probe? It's Mike and Dave of the Odyssey Files. Hold on to your hats and buns.
This is Elizabeth Saint. You know, in my journeys, I've confronted an over 1,000-year-old demon from the depths of Shepherdstown. But then, you know what happened? I came across Mike and Dave. And hot damn, nothing could have prepared me for the Odyssey Files. My second favorite radio show. I love you guys.
And we are back. All right, so we got one more story to go, which I think I would have preferred this one. Just throwing that out there to the schizophrenia one or the poltergeist one. But all right, have at it, Mr. Sawyering.
You got it. Why don't they ask better questions? Hi. So, serious question here. Why do paranormal shows on TV ask the same types of questions? I will flip from show to show occasionally, and from what I have seen, the questions are the same basic, generic questions. Things like, was that you? Are you here? Can you tell me your name? Can you move or touch this object? Etc. I have never heard anyone ever ask the spirit something like, have you seen any gods? Or what do you remember about your life? Or is it just pitch black like what you see in some of the movies? Is it just pitch black there, like what you see in some of the movies? Or were you greeted by a loved one when you passed, etc.? I think it would be more interesting to ask questions that could possibly produce repeatable instances. What are your thoughts on this? Do either of you ask questions looking for repeatable results? Absolutely, I do. Anytime that I've been out, I don't go into any investigation with any type of game plan. I kind of go in with a blank slate, and whatever the energy and the location is whatever direction it's going to go is kind of the direction I go with it. I think that's part of the reason that I get a ton of communication, is that I'm open and I'm willing. I'm not going in there with my set, rigid, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to be. And then if you walk in with that attitude, I think everything possibly that's there spiritual wise is going to be like, yeah, I don't want to play that game. I've seen, people here like that before. We're not interested in that. And they just move. They're there, but they're not communicating with you. To answer the question, I agree wholeheartedly that the questions that they're asked on the TV shows are generic. Was that you? Are you here? Tell me your name. Can you move or touch us out? I mean, that's all you hear. Now, I won't say all you hear because that's a definitive answer, but it's a majority of what you hear. I don't see shows, or at least shows that are popular, that I have seen some shows that I liked that only made it like a season, where they actually had what I thought was a good approach to investigating. And they walked in and had some really good lines of questions and or conversations with the location. I think that's a big thing, having a conversation with the location. I know that sounds weird, and no, I didn't speak that improperly. You need to go in and have a normal conversation. We talked about this and we've laughed about it and joked about it, that sometimes you'll get one of the best EVPs of the whole night saying something like, hey, it's Tuesday. My house was spaghetti night at Tuesday. Tuesdays was pasta night. What did you guys do on Tuesdays? And you might get a phenomenal class A response. It might even be a disembodied voice, because the person who's there, the energy that's there, is engaged in you and engaged in the conversation, because you're not coming in there with these same generic questions. So yeah, as far as, do I think that they need to do better job with questions? Absolutely, I do. I think it's interesting. I don't know that you're going to get repeatable results as far as scientific in that community type of thing, throwing it in quotes, that you're not going to get repeatable results that can be used to say, aha, look, we've now got a grasp on this. I don't think that that's possible. Do I think that it's interesting to get repeatable results at different locations if you ask non-standard questions? Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And I think that as an investigator, I think that more people should be doing that. We already know that entities are there if something's happening. So stop asking that. The second thing, and this is one of my absolute biggest pet peeves, and I'm just going to rant this for 5 seconds. Don't ever go into a situation and be like, well, if you knock twice because you want us to leave, then we're going to leave. No, you're not. I've always told my investigators, don't ever say that. I ever hear you say that, you're off the team, or you're not coming on, you're going to be punted, you're not coming for a couple of weeks or whatever, because that is the absolute worst thing. We didn't travel all this way. We didn't come to this client's house who reached out to us and is having a situation in their lives that's causing them grief and despair. And they asked us to come in. And then you're going to say something like, oh yeah, well, if you just do this, then because you're uncomfortable that we're here, then we're just going to leave. No, we're not leaving. We're not going anywhere. So don't say that. Don't make any type of stupid commitment that isn't going to be true. I think that can turn the atmosphere from a somewhat pleasant one to an aggressive one. And I think that that's absolutely one of the biggest mistakes I ever see on watching any of the shows, any of them. And I've seen almost everybody be guilty of that. I just shake my head in disbelief when I hear that. So is it repeatable? I don't know. Would it be cool if we got cool, repeatable results? Absolutely. Do I think we're going to get repeatable results? Yeah. I don't know. I guess you'd have to try it. You'd have to focus on that and go to different locations and focus on it and see what happens.
Yep. So as director of team myself, and I even had, like I said earlier in the show, had an investigation last night. I get both sides of the coin, and so I'm gonna take each side of it. So the reason that we ask such generic questions as to, do you know what year it is, what's your name, we need to establish at least a foundation of communication, and we have to ask really easy questions. You can't just go in and be like, hey, my name is Mike, so what was your first thought when you saw God? Like, you're not going to get a very good answer from that, because it's hard enough for them to answer in general. They can give you your name, they can give you the year, because they're easy answers, and we can establish the fact that they're there and that they're trying to communicate with you before you move into the really hard questions or the very personal questions. TV does a horrible job of that. Very horrible job, because all they are interested in is the reaction. All they want is there anybody here? And the REM pod goes off. That's all they want. They don't care what the implication of that is. They don't care what the follow-up question is. They want the reaction of the spirit, and then the other reaction of the people, investigators that are watching it. That's all that they care about. That's all that they want. So that's all you're going to see. Real investigators do ask very personal, very deep questions, but not right off the bat. How would you feel if somebody came in your home and be like, so tell me about your favorite Bible verse, or something along those lines? You'd be like, what? How about you introduce yourself first? Or let's have a drink. Let's get to know each other a little better before you start dipping into, like my religious background and how I did this and stuff like that. I've been to the location we went to last night many, many times. So I have a personal connection with them. I don't need to ask those questions anymore. I ask how they're doing. I mean, hell, last night, for the very first time, I actually had to apologize. I was like, do you care that I'm still wearing my shoes? I mean, I'm in their house, and it's never even occurred to me to ask them if it was all right if I was wearing my shoes in their house. And I don't know if I got a reaction or not. But, we do ask those questions. Dave, you're right. Because we actually, I tell people this all the time. I'm like, do you like meatballs? Just the off the wall, stupid ass question that might bring somebody in because it's something different than the normal questions. One investigation, I actually started talking about sex. And because Cena, who obviously has been on the show, said that they were bored. And so I thought that I would liven things up and talk about something I never talk about. And it was only like 5 minutes into the questioning where I was like, are they paying attention now? I'm like, are they still bored? I think is what my answer was. And she's like, no, they're pissed. So, I mean, it happens. But, real investigators out there do. They do ask those questions. It's just they don't have the camera on them. You don't see that. We still ask the easy questions to make that foundation, but then we start moving into what is applicable for that particular location. Just as you said, Dave, I'm not going to go to Farrar, schoolhouse and start asking questions about mental instability. You're going to go there and you're going to ask questions about being a student or being a teacher or, being the principal, whatever. And that is what real investigators do. So don't take what you see on TV as what happens all the time. And everybody always, investigates that specific way. We don't, not at all. If you're, I guess, mimicking them, then sure, all your investigations are probably just as dull as what you see on TV. But those who can think for themselves, like Dave and myself, our investigations are actually much, much more personal and creative than what you see on TV.
And the other thing is, and I've said this forever from day one, if you want to have an experience and you're there at a location trying to have an experience and then the experience happens, it's okay to be shocked. It's okay to be caught off guard, but don't scream and take off running because you're asking, and when they do that on TV, I just want to I don't want to ruin my TV, but I want to just grab something and throw it through the television set in hopes of hitting him upside the head. It's the same thing. Don't make a commitment with something stupid like, if you knock, we're going to leave the room or leave the investigation or whatever. And number two, if you're waiting to have an experience and then you actually get the opportunity, and it is rare that you would have an experience like that where you get a manifestation or something to the effect of object movement that would cause you to be shocked or scared. I can't tell you how many times I've walked around the corner and had a face pop into my face. And does it cause you to stop in your tracks and be like, oh, time out? Yeah, absolutely it does, because you're not expecting it to be there. But you're asking for the moment. You get the moment. Appreciate the moment. If you can't appreciate that moment as it's happening, then you're in the wrong field. Get out of the field. and I say that with I say that in the nicest way possible, but the field doesn't need hacks. Just like if the medical profession doesn't need, horrible surgeons, as an example, we don't need people in our field that are thrill seekers or something, and maybe that's the wrong term to use, but people that are in our field that are going out there telling private resident families that are having issues, and then go in there and provoke or invoke something until you get that experience, and then that experience happens, and then instead of documenting it and trying to understand why it happened and how it's benefiting and or harming the family, you take off running, and then in your mind you've just got this, man, I had this great moment, and then all it is a story for you to tell your friends. Get out of the field, move on, and do something else with your life, because you're not helping us and you're not helping the family.
It's like you were harnessing your inner me in that answer.
Yeah, maybe.
You're channeling it.
Yeah.
All righty. So moving on to our main topic of tonight, which is obviously Skinwalker Ranch. So not to waste a whole bunch of time with the history of Skinwalker Ranch, because we can kind of do that next week as we talk to Mark about how he got involved in it and everything like that. So if you don't know what Skinwalker Ranch is, I don't know why you're listening to this show, because we talk about it all the time, and you should definitely be up to date on at least what Skinwalker Ranch is. You don't necessarily have to watch every episode of the show, but at least know what it is. So we have certain things, and over the 4 years they've done this show, they have come across a lot of stuff. Like, this is right along the lines of like Oak Island. Like, every year it gets more intense, and you feel like they're just getting closer and closer.
Mhm.
And this discovery was here and this discovery here. Like, how did they not find that 2 years ago? That sort of thing. So why don't you kick us off with what you think is probably one of the more important.
All right. So I sent you earlier today, I sent you 4 things, when we were talking about, and obviously I've got much more than this, but I figured between my 4 and you, if you have 4, we're going to be lucky to get an hour out of it. So I'm going to start. One of the ones that I think is the most important at this location is the use of sound to trigger activity. So 2 of the instances, and I don't know why they're not doing more of this, and I think that they probably will, or they should. And it's one of the questions that I have for Mark. Is 2 of the things that I'll point out was when a couple seasons ago, when the rabbi visited the ranch and actually did the full set of prayers in Hebrew, and they broadcast it over the loudspeakers in front of Homestead 2 and had the FLIR going, and actually watched this incredible temperature change with no logical explanation happen on the FLIR while the prayers were being recited. That in itself I found fascinating. The fact that in Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, right, that they used the same set of prayers, and it also evoked
a reaction.
I was going to say not a manifestation, but a reaction, right? It got a reaction by using those prayers. So I think there's something to that. I don't know that it's necessarily the old language. Maybe it is the old language that brought it out. Maybe it's just the fact that it's prayers that brought it out. I'm not sure, but something to do with that brought out activity. The other thing that I found really fascinating, and I wish that they would go deeper with this, and I wish that they would repeat it and repeat it as many times as they need to. And I understand why they didn't, because when the native drummers were at the location, if anybody didn't see that episode, you need to watch it. So they bring in a set of native drummers from different native backgrounds, different tribes. It's a group of individuals who do the old ancient type of like energy drumming and things that they would have done when they were having ceremonies hundreds of years ago. And when they did that, they caught two things that really stood out to me. Number one, the drummers themselves came back and said, "Hey, we're hearing somebody moving around in the rocks right above us." And they caught a dark shadow, like a shadow figure, shadow person. I'm not sure what it was, but it was a manifestation of a shadow of something that was like coming up and approaching the drum circle, either watching it as an observer or coming in wondering exactly what was happening, and maybe had some other type of agenda. We don't know, because when they went up and they saw it and they went up after it, it dissipated, it disappeared, it hid, whatever the case is, went back, to where it came from, and they didn't see it. The other thing was that ancient circle of stones, which when they looked it up, they said that it was the Native Americans symbolizing a portal. When they did that drum circle, that portal, that rock formation actually heated up, like it was reacting to the ancient drumming of what they were trying to accomplish. I found that to be incredibly amazing, and absolutely just amazing that they did that and they got a reaction like that. And I think, and I hopefully they are, and it's just not making it to TV. But I think that they really need to dig deeper into that, of why is sound evoking such visual responses, like creating documented activity that you can't explain. So,
well, so just to kind of build off that, I know that you haven't seen all of the episodes of this season, so you're missing
the last couple.
Yeah, you're missing the season finale, and
Yep.
I tried to give you kind of a brief synopsis of that, where I said that they took all of their experiments and molded it into one. Well, one of the things that they did during that episode was they took a recording of that drum and they played it over over the loudspeakers and stuff like that, as they were doing everything else. So they have dipped into that a little bit. I mean, they obviously did not forget that they had that sort of reaction. The other thing that you kind of forgot to mention that follows along with the episode that they talked about, or where they had the bear group. It's a bear something.
I wrote it down too, because I was going to reach out to them, because I think that'd be fascinating to have them on the show.
Agreed. So, but the other thing besides the heating up of the stones was those two UAPs on the FLIR that came shooting into the mesa.
Right. Exactly.
One of which actually, zoomed off right at the end.
Yep.
From the straight line, which is not something you see very often. So, I mean, that did get a major reaction. And I think this goes back to, a lot of what is going on at Skinwalker Ranch deals with frequency, and especially radio frequency. I mean, they're talking about the 1.6 gigahertz constantly. I mean, that's every episode now. And it should be, because it's got definitely something to do with whatever is going on there. And so, I mean, as they pound the drums, as they do the rabbi, that's all sound waves, that's all sound frequency. And somehow this, whatever is going on, reacts to that, whether by design or natural, I have no idea. But I think that sound is going to be very important in this, because I mean, even in my investigations, I have played music. I've gone into a location that has like a chapel, in it, and have played Amazing Grace. I have gone to a cemetery where there are a lot of veterans and played the Star Spangled Banner. And these type of things have gotten a major response. I mean, maybe not to the point of, 1,000 EVPs and all the equipment goes nuts, but like the feeling of the area, the energy that you feel all changes
It
for the
changes. Absolutely. Yep.
for the better. And I often and I kind of get weird looks when I say this, but I mean it's not far off as people always, I should say always, but I mean people ask, how do EVPs form? How do they know what question? They don't have ears. They don't have ear energy. And I always say I always say they're dead. They're not deaf.
Right.
And I always get, I always get a lot of weird looks at that. But it goes along the same line, because even radio frequencies and sound waves are energy. So why would that not be compatible with spirits who are in fact energy?
Look, if you think about our ears don't hear. Our ears are just collection points, right? It's the actual vibrations that are interpreted by our brain, and our brain is electrical, and the electrical current is what moves forward when you pass away. So it makes common sense to me. I'd be confused. I would look at somebody with a confused look if they said, "How can spirits hear you?" Well, obviously, just like you can hear me, right? They don't need a meat suit to hear you. It's just a receptor. It's like like one of the dishes, the boom mic, like if you want to hear something at a distance. Like we always thought, we even talked about that years ago. It'd be great to get a boom mic to take on investigations. So when you hear you're in a location and you get that whisper from across the room, you would be able to potentially catch it substantially better.
Not a boom mic, a parabolic mic.
Parabolic mic. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yep. Parabolic mic.
With the inverted dish with the microphone in the middle where it catches all of the ambient sound, and you could hear, a leaf crumble at 50 yards,
Like a cat.
Like a cat. I was just going to say that. Just like it'd be like the cat hearing that we were talking about earlier.
So I mean, I agree. I would like them to go forward with the sound. I'd like them to experiment with a bunch of different type sounds.
Yeah.
What happens when they play, the Star Spangled Banner, or what happens when they play rock and roll, or it's different, or maybe they just broadcast. Maybe it's not even sound, but sound waves. That don't have music or whatever. I mean, that's kind of what they're doing. I mean, they even tried to do that over the radio when they had that radio station broadcast a 1.6 gigahertz signal.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing to it. It was just, there wasn't no music to it.
Right.
But that got a reaction as well.
Right.
So, I do agree with you on that one. Absolutely. That I think that they should try to do that. Trying to find mine. There we go. So I actually already talked about the 1.6 gigahertz signal, but I'd like to go further into it, because that has now become like a staple of everything, of both shows, even beyond Skinwalker Ranch. All has the the RF full spectrum analyzer that has the 1.65, or now it's a 1.7, but it's all right in that.
It's right in that group. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and beyond Skinwalker Ranch actually started bringing up like more details about it, because they started talking about like these data packages that were being sent out on that.
I saw that episode. That was interesting. That they were getting data packets, but they had no idea what the information was.
Right. I mean, you have to know what to look for in order to know what is going on. So, I mean, what kind of, and I honestly, I don't know if this is on purpose or not, but I mean, they talk about, and this is my question to you, Dave. They talk about all the time that 1.6 gigahertz is what people use to communicate with satellites.
Yeah, it's military application is what they keep saying.
Right. The military application to talk to satellites.
Right. Like it's a private channel type of thing is what the impression I get from what they say.
Yes. In fact, when they had that Beyond Skinwalker Ranch or whatever, and they brought in that ham radio guy,
Yeah,
they wanted to broadcast 1.6, and he was talking about how he had to get, he had to have a permit, or he had to have some sort of approval in order to broadcast on that frequency.
Right. But there was some backdoor way that he did it. Like he bounced it. Like he sent it to another place and then like bounced it back to the 1.6 somehow.
Yeah. Crazy.
So he found a way around it, but
right.
And they got that amazing results because that was the lady was there asking about the UFOs in that episode, and I thought it was astounding.
Where the energy suddenly spiked after she was done with her question. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that was an intelligent response.
So here's my question to you.
Yep.
If the 1.6 gigahertz is used by military application to talk to satellites, and everybody seems to know this, and they're getting this 1.6 gigahertz all the time, why is it never talked about, or why is it never gone into to think that there's something on the ranch that is literally sending a signal up to a satellite? Because I mean, they talk about like underground military bases and stuff, but now they have this military 1.6 gigahertz type thing talking to a satellite, but they don't ever do any experiments or talk about something literally doing that. And I'm wondering why, and if it's on purpose. I love those kind of the same questions.
So do I think it's possible? Absolutely, because I think it ties into one of my other points that I wanted to bring up was when they did the drilling into the mesa and they came out with those metal shavings and then took them in and discovered what they were, and that they're the same material used as the coating for re-entry from outer space for satellites and for like the space
the heat tiles.
The heat tiles, right, exactly. And that they're grinding this blade is grinding into them, and that they're getting these shavings, and that is in the mesa. Now, what the hell is something like that doing in a rock mesa in the middle of Utah? Right. Obviously that's one of their big questions too. One of my big questions is there's obviously something is in there. Obviously there's something in the mesa because they have physical, tangible proof of these metal shavings that are heat tiles that are used for reentry from outer space. Now, I'm tying this in, is that possibly something that's there that is sending out a signal? I think it's a very distinct possibility. I think that whatever's in the mesa, whatever material is in the mesa, whether it be man-made or whether it be alien technology, whether it's a crashed UFO, whether it's a time portal, whether it's some kind of wormhole and there's a base there, and that goes back to, again, the whole LiDAR thing that I want to talk about it in the next, half hour, with finding what looks to be the wormhole over the triangle. Is that tied to, is there something hidden in the mesa? And I think that it probably is. I know that Brandon has said that he doesn't want to do structural damage to the mesa for visual appearance reasons. I also think that mesa sits right on the borderline, obviously, of the Ute tribe. And so I think there's probably some conversation going back and forth with the Ute tribe saying, you know what, we're not going to dynamite the mesa, and blow the thing to smithereens to find out, what's in there and, and dig through the rubble and see what we find. We're not going to do that. I respect that decision. It makes it more difficult to dig into the mesa, though, obviously, and find out exactly what's in there. I think that whatever is transporting that or sending that 1.6 gigahertz signal is what's in the mesa. I think they're tied together.
So I don't know if this is the show for the crazy speculations.
But the Skinwalker Ranch is all kind of speculation. I mean, there is some tangible physical proof, like the metal shavings. That's tangible physical proof.
Right.
The FLIR footage, the stuff they catch on those high-speed cameras. That's all, to me, that is tangible physical evidence of something paranormal happening at the ranch.
Right. So here is, and this goes back because we were talking about this last week. That the book, written by Hawley, the Secret War, talks about extraterrestrial or non-human biologics. We want to go back to last week, but and things that they're doing around the planet, and they're pretty much trying to keep us from blowing ourselves up or getting a little bit too big for our britches. And the reaction from let's just say the US, the US military, the US government, but just the world in general, I should say other country militaries, not the world in general, but in the fact that they're fighting them, they're trying to keep their superiority. I put that in quotes, but and usually any reaction that happens is it follows the 1.6 gigahertz arrival. And there was the whole thing of you don't want to dig into you don't want to dig on Skinwalker Ranch because it doesn't like that. Right. Even though they're throwing that to the wind. But
they've done some digging.
Oh, no, they have. They threw that out the window. The whole don't dig on Skinwalker Ranch, which is great because we both agree that it's what they needed to do.
Oh yeah.
But it seems to me that every time that they try to do some sort of an experiment, the reaction is just enough to shut them down. It's not enough to hurt them. It's not enough to blow things up. It's not enough. Honestly, it's not even enough to discourage them. It is just enough to stop them at a certain point, whether it's a technological failure or the hell's his name? The rancher, the one that had the bump in his back of his head.
Oh,
I keep wanting to say Jamie, but that's not it.
No. Anyway,
but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
I mean, sometimes he's like, okay, I'm starting to feel something here. Like he's getting
to get him off the ranch.
Yeah, and they have to get him off the ranch, but it's enough to like throw up. Like, okay, we need to be we need to be here. We need to be cautious here. And so I wonder if everything that is going on is in some way the defense mechanism to keep them from figuring out what is going on. And that signal is run by an AI system, because I can't imagine the military doesn't have an AI system.
Right.
Sending up its signal to a satellite in order to get orders on what exactly it should do. And I think that it continually gets the prevent type thing. So it throws out an EMP pulse or something like that to shut down whatever they're trying to do. And I don't think that there's an alien craft in there. I definitely think it's something that's man-made. But its purpose is what I'm interested in. Why was it put there? And I definitely think that Bigelow had something to do with it. For the 20 years that he had that ranch, I honestly think that he was working for the government. We talked about that last week a little bit.
He was funded by the government for part of that. Part of the time, I don't know that he was funded every year, so I'm not going to say that, but he was definitely funded. Part of the research that was done on that ranch when he owned it came from federal money. It was government money. So for certain that happened. My question for you then would be and following what you just said, number one, if he placed something in the mesa, they did a hell of a job cosmetically putting the mesa back together. So that would be my first question. Okay. Secondly, what would you need heat tile, space reentry resistance heat tile for on an object placed in a mesa if that object's never going to go into space? Like, what would be the purpose behind using such a rare ingredient, a rare combination of metals for something that you're just placing in the mesa? Why would you not just choose a different material?
Well, it could be. I mean, they didn't say it is what is used on the space shuttle. They said it's like what they used on the space shuttle. And, maybe it's because it has more of an application. Maybe it can be used for stability, structural stability. To keep obviously the mace is heavy. So they have to have they have to have something surrounding this thing. It has to be built out of a material that can withstand that type of weight and pressure. And and the thing about it is who knows if it's not supposed to go into space. I honestly, I've had the thought just by watching the show and whatnot that it's some sort of defense mechanism against UFOs, which might be why anytime that 1.6 gigahertz signal is broadcasted, it brings them to it. And they always see UAPs, like, and they see them a lot. They see them a lot, and especially when they broadcast that signal. Right. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's if extraterrestrials, whoever are, non-human biologics are aware of like what is buried or, what that signal means, is it not a beacon to them that they go to try to check out what is going on when they broadcast that signal? It might be some sort of major defense mechanism or defense system that at some point in time will, if I'm just, please forgive me for the terminology I'm about to use. If the mothership suddenly, shows up and, they freak out, who's to say it's not some gigantic thing where all of a sudden the mesa is just going to implode and this big ass freaking, piece of military equipment, I guess you could call it, is now suddenly, being sent up to blow them up or defend the world. I put that in quotes.
All right.
We're getting out there.
We are getting out there, and I am not on the same page as you with that. I think that what's there is not man-made. I think whatever they're going to find eventually, hopefully they'll find something in the mesa. And if they do, I don't think it's man-made. I think it's of alien origin. So I did find something interesting, though, that I want to throw in here while we're doing the 1.6 frequency thing. So they have said repeatedly 1.6 gigahertz is like a private communications thing between the military and satellites, and it's used for defense and stuff like that. I went to the FCC and looked at the FCC's table of frequency allocations just to kind of see what was happening. And 1.6 gigahertz is used for multiple things. It's not just a military frequency. So it's used in radio astronomy for studying celestial objects such as galaxies, quasars, and pulsars. That makes sense for what's happening on the ranch, right? Because if you think about it, if there's a radio astronomy tower built into the mesa somehow, that would make sense to me that is some sort of
early warning
radio, some two-way shortwave radio to talk to alien life. Okay. The other thing that it said was 1.6 gigahertz is frequently in the ultra-high frequency range, which is commonly used for communication systems such as cell phones, GPS, and satellite television. And then thirdly, it said the utility and critical infrastructure industry, also known as the UCII sector, the 1.6 gigahertz band is ideal for companies in this sector for a range of applications that can benefit from the next generation 5G technological capabilities. All right, so taking that all into account, I went and found an individual who's been studying Skinwalker Ranch and this particular phenomena for a long time. And this is his quote. So this is somebody who's been digging into it a lot deeper than you and I, kind of skimming the surface and trying to understand it. So he said that, obviously repeating some of this, the 1.6 gigahertz frequency is the ultra high frequency range, commonly used, as I said already, for cell phones, GPS, and satellite TV. Some wireless technologies, such as wireless sensors and LOT devices, might operate in the 1.6 frequency range as well. Although this is less common, an otherworldly being could choose to use this frequency range to control or monitor devices, gather data, or interact with Earth's technological infrastructure. I found that to be kind of fascinating. That's a fascinating quote. Because whatever it is, we've been thinking, okay, what if it's us broadcasting? What if not? What if it's some sort of receptor that is placed there by an alien life form or an alien technology that they are using to kind of spy on our infrastructure, on our data? And what better way to get an idea of what the human population is all about than to just go in and take a look at the airwaves? Because right now, everybody's life is on the airwaves, just like we are right now. Every time you're on your cell phone, every time you're having a conversation, every time you're doing a search on Google, every time you're doing whatever, everybody's lives is completely out there floating around in space, for lack of a better term. It's in the airwaves all around us. So what better way to spy on us in the effect that we are advancing technology? Who's to say that they didn't give us the ability to create this technology, knowing that in the end, once we got it mastered and put it in place and started using it, that it was going to benefit them? And that was the end result in the end game the whole entire time. Now, obviously, that's also out there, but it doesn't not make sense. So,
well, it makes as much sense as everything that I said.
Right. Right.
But
So
I mean,
some speck of truth to it. I think there is. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it. You know, my mind wouldn't go that way. But am I like on target? Probably not.
Although if alien life is able to use the 1.6 gigahertz frequency in order to spy on us, why would we not be able to use the 1.6 gigahertz frequency to spy on us? I mean, if there's any,
that's why it has to have a license, because it is a private observational type of network. And here's my other question for that, and for you. Why, if it's strict, if 1.6 gigahertz is strictly about the Mesa on the ranch, then why on Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, when they're going to other locations that kind of have similar activity that they're being drawn to, why are they getting the 1.6 gigahertz signal responses at those locations? It doesn't make any sense to me then when you put common sense together. If we're saying that there's something in the Mesa that's causing it to happen, then how in the hell is it also happening at all these other random locations? Are we saying that there's something in the earth at all these other random locations that is similar or exact to what's in the Mesa? And that's what's causing all this weirdness to happen at these other locations?
yes.
Okay.
So
then I don't think it's man-made then.
Well, so here's why I think it's man-made, and here's why I think they're getting it. And it came from the other location that Robert Bigelow owned, and and for whatever reason, and this it absolutely hit me like a ton of bricks when the Beyond Skinwalker Ranch team showed Travis and Eric their evidence, and Travis looks at it and he goes, "You know what that looks like? It looks like a phased array." And for whatever reason, it hit me like a ton of bricks that is exactly what it is supposed to do. If you watch the movie The Arrival with Charlie Sheen, great flippin' movie. Love that movie to death. I should watch it again. But that whole movie is premised on him finding the signal being
Yep.
broadcast back to Earth. And then obviously, JPL or whatever, astronomical. Did I say that right? Probably not. But astrophysical, maybe, I don't know. But was shut down, fired, and what he did is he noticed that throughout his city, people had satellite dishes, and he hooked them all together across the city to make a phased array. And in order to get this signal. So what if what we're looking at here is not, satellite dishes throughout one city, but like the entire western seaboard or whatever, and specifically put places that are out in the middle of nowhere that have been turned into a massive phased array. And maybe Skinwalker Ranch is the transmitter. Because I actually did some research. I didn't get all the way through like I wanted to. But I actually did some research on phased arrays before the show. And that one of the things, they all need a transmitter, and it's obviously meant to send out radio frequencies, which they can actually narrow.
Pinpoint it. Yep.
They can pinpoint and narrow down. I mean, what if this whole thing has been devised, and that's what is underneath all of these places, is they've turned like half the United States into a humongous phased array.
Well, number one, that would be an absolutely humongous undertaking.
They had 20 years.
It's still a humongous undertaking. And then
Agreed.
you've got the logistics of covertly putting them in place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the type of location, like where they're not going to be discovered, like they're not going to, obviously, like burying something in the mesa, like unless you blow that mesa up, you're not going to discover it. I would imagine that the other locations, they're not just sitting a foot below the surface of the earth, that they're actually somehow in some type of situation where they're not going to be discoverable without some humongous investment in excavation, which in those locations would not happen. It doesn't make any sense that you would go out in the middle of nowhere in the Utah flatlands, scrub grass prairie, and start doing some major excavation work. I don't know. That's a new concept to me. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that they're getting the 1.6 gigahertz frequency at locations off the ranch. There's something is tying all these locations together with that signal. I also think it's interesting that they're seeing things similar to those packets of information being broadcast, even though they can't decipher them or understand what their context of them is, but they can visually see them on the device at different locations. So something is being broadcast. Some information is being broadcast. Now, whether that's being broadcast from outer space back to Earth, or whether that's being broadcast from Earth to outer space, is the question that we don't have an answer for. And I don't know that we're ever going to have that answer unless we start excavating shit. And I think you're right in the fact that there are safety measures in place to make sure that those devices do not get excavated. I think, and it's probably, if you think about it, right? And I don't know anything about phased arrays, but if you think about it, like if you had, are they all like dependent on each other for operation? So like if one of them was removed, let's say, would it screw up the system in the fact that it would not work anymore?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because each array, or like each point of the array, can have its own transmitter put into it.
Okay.
And so even though they will work as one, they can work independently of each other.
Okay. With obviously less power, though. They're
Well,
more
right.
powerful joined together than they would be operating individually.
Well, right. Like if you aimed it at the sky, like one part of it might hit one small little portion, whereas all of it would hit a humongous portion.
Right.
So I mean, I would assume that if they are, let's just say for the sake of argument, that is something that is viable, that they would keep it down to one or whatever, because that minimizes the exposure. I mean, I would think that if you do like a multi-state, multi-ranch type phased array all at once, people are going to notice. But
I would think you'd get interference.
Well, you
I mean,
probably would.
It sounds like it'd be pretty powerful. I would think that would start interfering with other communications, some like civilian communication systems.
Right, and I agree with that. As much as I want to stay in this topic, we only have 9 minutes left, and I really want to get to the wormhole.
Yeah.
Because that for me, it's so surprising. And I don't know if, again, that's part of the show and shown that way on purpose, but like everybody's acceptance that could be an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a wormhole on Skinwalker Ranch, and that is what's causing all this. Like that doesn't seem to be surprising anybody, but like it excites them. And so, one of the questions that I have is how much more into this information do they actually have, as opposed to what they are showing that they have.
Well, I'm sure they're not disclosing everything on the show that they know.
Well, they should.
Well, I agree with you 100%. I thirst for knowledge, and that's why I love that show, because it really is digging. It's the only show really that's digging deep in a logical format to really get some concrete answers. And it's got, so I agree. It should. Now, that theory of wormholes has been on the ranch for hundreds of years, though. It's not something new. Like the Native Americans have been saying forever, like going back to the 1400s, 1500s, they've been saying forever that that's a special location because it has a portal there. We call it a wormhole. They called it a portal. They probably didn't even call it a portal. Our interpretation of what they called it turned into the word portal so that we would understand it in our language. I'm sure that was not the term they used for it. But that aside, I think that just the fact that it's been around forever, it's marked as a location with a portal by that ancient stone circle that heated up during the drumming session. So I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. I'm not surprised that that LiDAR picked up that worm, that potential wormhole. Call it a wormhole, call it a portal. To me, they're the same thing when we're talking about the ranch. I don't think there's a difference. I think the stories of the sky opening up and seeing crafts and beings coming out of the sky, it looked like tears in the sky. They found that exact same photo that they showed on Beyond Skinwalker Ranch at the other ranch. When the lady was doing dishes in the kitchen and took the picture out of her window and the sky was ripped open and things were coming out of the tear. And it was this bright orange atmosphere that's on the other side. And then it just closes up. That's a great personal experience. Just because it's not just because nobody was standing there with a 4K high def camera system doesn't mean it didn't happen. I totally believe the dire wolf story. I mean, the guy's a cattle rancher. Why is he telling stories about this gigantic wolf befriending them, walking up and being calm and complacent with a shoulder height is almost as tall as him? Number one, why wouldn't he be shitting his pants and running back to the house just in general? If I saw a wolf that big, I don't care what I would be out of there. I certainly wouldn't be standing there like you're going to pet the thing, even if it didn't have a sense of energy around it of aggression. I don't care. Just the size of it and the potential of what it could do to you. and it grabs the calf. He unloads the 357 Magnum on it, and then goes and gets a 30-06 and drops a couple rounds into it, and then they track it, and it just is gone. It just disappears. There's all kinds of stuff that's been happening on the ranch like that. Do I think that happened? Absolutely, I do. I think it's one of the stories about the ranch that, and if you take a look at it, just because it hasn't been replicated doesn't mean it didn't happen then. There's things that are happening on the ranch now that didn't happen when the Shermans owned it, I'm sure. Does that make them not legitimate? No. It just makes a different time frame. Different things were happening at different times. It's always been a location of strangeness, of weird activities. And as we said, it's the whole basin. So I want to make that clear. There's weird shit happening in that whole basin. It's not just the ranch. It's not just the 540 acres and everything else is completely normal around it. It's not normal at all. It even extends out into the Ute Reservation. That lake over there that they have over the top of the mesa that's on reservation land has all kinds of activity and shit going on in there. So it's that whole location. It's the whole area. That's a hotbed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it just kind of seems at least centered around Skinwalker.
I agree.
Ranch.
It seems, or that's the place. And as in some of the books that I've read on Skinwalker Ranch and some of the articles I've read, it's the place where they were able to purchase the land and then set up shop. The people that are around there don't want to sell their land and don't want anything to do with the experiments that are going on. The other ranches that are around that location. That's why you don't see them coming forward. They don't want anything to do with it.
Well, especially when it involves skinwalkers.
Right. And who wants to invoke skinwalkers? If skinwalkers are legitimately on Skinwalker Ranch, and that's why it's named for Skinwalker Ranch, and you own QA Ranch next door, and your 540 acre ranch is like right to the left, I'm pretty satisfied with the fact that the Skinwalkers can stay on Skinwalker Ranch and not come over to QA Ranch. I have no issue with that if I was that ranch owner. And I think that that's why you're seeing that they don't want to play. They don't want anything to do with it. And that's been the consensus. Newspaper articles back that up, documentaries, books, everything backs that up. That happens to be a parcel of land where they've got the opportunity to go do what they wanted to do. And that's why it's the center. But I don't think it's the true center. I think that whole basin is hot.
Gotcha. Well, we are out of time. So we got to about 30% of what we wanted to talk about.
Exactly.
So I didn't even get in what I wanted to talk about with the wormhole. So I mean, I had some things we'll talk about at another time, or
sure.
We'll bring up
East Field, like the spire in the East Field. I wanted to talk about that. All the issues with the helicopter. Every time they try to use the helicopter for experiments, like something is buzzing by him or causing interference that's freaking them out, thinking that they're going to crash. I mean, there's something you hit it on the head earlier. There's some type of defense mechanism that's non-life threatening, but is technologically threatening. Shutting down the drones, shutting down the helicopter, things that could potentially gather data and expose what's there is being shut down.
Mm-hmm. But they're finding ways around it.
Yeah, and it's repeated time and time and time again, which makes it legitimate.
And I think that anytime they get a little bit too close, maybe the defense mechanisms didn't do what it was supposed to do for whatever reason, or it wasn't enough. Yeah. That's when you have the helicopters that start flying over.
I agree. I mean, why do the Blackhawks? What was it? 160 miles away is the closest base or something like that.
It's far.
It's a distance. And they're like, and they're flying Chinooks, which is like the Black Ops Navy SEALs team. Why are they flying a freaking Chinook over the ranch? When the closest base is 160 miles away, and then you got the Blackhawks coming in. So I agree. I mean, they're there for a reason, and they're doing observation, and they're not sending out signals, and they're supposed to be sending out the signals in case there's
transmitting.
Yeah, they're not transmitting, and they're supposed to be obviously for air safety for other planes and other things in the area.
Yep.
And they're going dark, so they're there for covert reasons.
Yes, sir. All righty. So hopefully we will see everybody in just a couple of days with showrunner from Skinwalker Ranch, Mark Mauricio. I'll find out probably tomorrow how to pronounce his last name. But hopefully, everything will be good with what is going on in California, and he will be able to join us on Thursday. So until next time, stay healthy, stay safe. We want to see you back here, everybody.